Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Yuri and I'd like to welcome you back to the FT studios in London for our PWM Tea Break, where we will be discussing key wealth management stories with special guests from the industry over a nice cuppa. Joining me today, I have Paul Whelan, London-based Director of Wealth Management at Mirabaud, a very traditional Swiss private bank from Geneva. Hello, Paul, and tell me, what kind of tea are you drinking today?
Good morning, Yuri. Firstly, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Controversially, I'm having a coffee today, so I'm having an oat milk latte.
But what led you to make that choice?
So I've always been a coffee drinker. Sometimes I think from early morning starts, it just gives you that energy boost to give you that spring in the step. And I've sort of gradually, as I've got older, got a little bit more into tea, but coffee's definitely my stronghold.
I've got a confession to make as well, Paul, and to our audience. I know this is the tea break, and I am a tea drinker historically since I was a child, but I'm actually partaking in the coffee today, and the reason is for that. Our first story is about an Italian bank, Banca Mediolanum, who I'm sure you're familiar with, and as we know, in that part of the world, coffee is the accepted drink rather than the tea that we're used to in other parts of Europe. This story that we're looking at, Paul, Mediolanum, one of Italy's most prominent wealth managers for the mass affluent clients, the so-called Signor and Signora Rossi, for whom the firm aims to recruit for its customer base. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed the head of asset management there, Furio Petribassi, who oversees 60 billion euros. And originally, all of the bank's asset management, it was outsourced to the likes of Goldman Sachs, State Street, BlackRock, Schroders, all the big brand asset managers. But now they're saying, we need more of an identity. We need to start managing more of that money internally. And I think they're up to 20 billion euros now internally rather than contracting everything out. What sort of conversations do you have with your clients at Mirabaud, Paul? Do they expect you to have some internal expertise in asset management rather than farming it all out to these big brands, some of whom may be rivals?
It's a really good question. I think banks, like any institution, need to think, why do clients come to them? What's their unique special sauce? And I do think that most clients do think that an asset allocation, core portfolio capability is what they would expect. Obviously, different banks have their own approaches to that. I think clients are generally far more understanding for what I'd call niche strategies or niche allocations, for example, private equities or emerging markets, where they expect that specialists might be used for that specific allocation. But overall, they would expect that to be in-house. More broadly, banks should think about what's their core competency and what's their not. But actually, when it comes to negative news, it's often when banks have outsourced that activity and it goes wrong and they lose control, that it can really come home to roost for them.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned the private equity, the private assets, because my colleague Ali Al-Anazi, who should be joining us for next week's show, he wrote a nice piece about the private assets which appeared during this week. He talked about a boom in the venture capital deals in machine learning and AI, especially in the US, and how private banks are reporting increasing demand for these private market investments. Is that true, Paul? Are your clients asking for these opportunities, or do you have to alert them to the private market story?
It's a bit of both, Yuri. So I think private assets can form a key part in a client's investment portfolio, but the devil's in the dose. And for larger family offices, they obviously have a broader range of capital where they can afford to lock that money away for a long period of time. But for smaller clients, obviously we need to be more careful that that money's locked away. If the money's locked away, then they can't access it. And I have this phrase that people don't care about liquidity until they do. And so something like a 10-year lock-in can seem fine, but 8 years in, you suddenly need that money. It can put the client and the bank in a difficult situation. The reality is that certain asset classes or certain investments are best played through private investments, per the article. So, for example, biotechs or really deep-rooted innovative technology just isn't necessarily best played through liquid markets. So we are definitely seeing demands, clients asking us about it, but it's about the right allocation and making sure that it's the right manager as well, because I think that plays far more of a key role than in liquid markets if you're looking at large cap equities, for example.
But that illiquidity that you mentioned, I mean, that's crucial to the whole decision, because you and I remember very well 2008, what Paul Marshall called the Hotel California moment. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave these investments. Does that still stick in the memory of a lot of family offices looking at alternative investments?
I think it does for some. And so family offices generally have more flexibility because of the substantial amounts of capital they can allocate across. And most family offices that I work with deploy what I call a barbell strategy. So they have very liquid investments and cash. So that cash float gives them the flexibility. And also, once you've been building up these investments over a number of years, you effectively have a laddering whereby the payoffs will gradually feed in. So actually, illiquidity isn't such an issue. For me, it's far more pertinent when you're looking at your standard Mrs. Miggins, as the client's known, as to make sure that those clients aren't caught in a liquid situation where they might need it for whatever means.
Well, one of the financial centres which has really developed expertise in these private markets is Luxembourg. And we've been writing about Luxembourg's efforts to woo new business from both funds and family offices. Paul, you've worked in several centres, including London and Geneva with Mirabaud and Credit Suisse as well. Do you feel every centre very much has its own investment culture?
I do. I think there are a number of really strong investment centres, each with their own culture. I mean, as it happens, the London office of Mirabaud is a branch of Luxembourg. So, I work with the teams there. I think there are a number of really strong professionals in that area. I think each of the centres has its own sweet spot. So family offices, for example, will often have the investment professionals in London, but they might do more of the corporate structuring through Luxembourg. So if you're large enough, you can pick and choose where to have different expertise across the globe.
But how do you market Luxembourg to advisors, to clients, to staff? It's not exactly the most exciting place to work, is it?
No, but I think that's a strength for it, quite frankly, that it's stable, that it's a robust regime. I mean, it's fair to say you often don't hear about Luxembourg being on the news for doing anything reckless, and I think that's where so many centres now benefit from that stability. That's what clients often want. They don't want that centre to be on the news. They want it to be in a robust, practical regime. It doesn't matter that it's not, as you say, where they'd want to go on holiday necessarily. It's where they feel safe holding their assets.
Because we're talking to families, very wealthy families, who are leaving London for one reason or another, be it tax, be it the non-dom regime, be it the lack of investments in the UK, and some of them are leaving for Luxembourg, some for Italy, some for Portugal. Is this the type of question that you're having with your client, the type of conversation you're having with your clients?
Absolutely. I think the nature of wealth, certainly at a certain point, is that it tends to be more international. I think it's the clients are considering the evolving environment in the UK, but more broadly, and what makes sense for them. And it's not just about tax. It's their businesses, their children's schools, and quite frankly, where do they want to live? And I think historically, perhaps clients would more frequently go to jurisdictions purely from a tax perspective, whereas I think now, frankly, and it's really a positive thing that advisors, the tax advisors, law firms that we work closely with, will try and give clients a more balanced view.
Because some of the families we've been talking to have pointed specifically to lack of investment in infrastructure in the UK, in hospitals, in railways, in schools, other facilities, particularly outside London. There is a need for a huge infrastructure investment, not just in the UK, but in other countries in Europe and in the US. Is this an investment theme that you discuss with your clients as well, Paul?
It is. And I think infrastructure investment has been an investment theme especially for family offices for a long time. And there's something quite nice about bricks and mortar, quite frankly. And that could be a train line, could be a bridge, these things. And ultimately, clients are investing in the returns they get from that, not the... it's the cash generated from a bridge rather than the bridge itself. But of course, these assets are illiquid. They are often linked with government contracts. And the key thing is they have the right manager involved in that to help them manage them through the process. And there's the old saying of during a gold rush, buy shovels. And I think with infrastructure, that's particularly interesting as it's not just about those sort of what I'd call physical infrastructure, but enabling technology, so through internet, through AI, and how with data centers, that I think will more and more prove a key investment area for clients.
And Paul, you said during the gold rush, buy shovels. Are there really episodes of people still burying gold in their back gardens? Does that take place today, or is it just a myth which private bankers spread?
I believe there are situations where clients do keep gold in their house or bury it in their garden. At Mirabaud, we have a sort of a safe facility in our Geneva offices, and clients can now also, for example, invest through ETFs, so it's far more accessible. And as an asset class, gold has done incredibly well in the last year, and it's primarily driven by central banks purchasing, but clients have done well. But they need to know why they're buying it. Are they buying it as an investment asset class or a diversification away from markets? Because if you're worried about markets, then an ETF isn't the right route to go down.
Well, a few interesting trends that you've told us about there, Paul, and many thanks for joining us today for our PWM Tea Break. And I'd also like to remind our viewers that these types of topics will be discussed on stage at our PWM and FT Live Global Wealth Management Summit 2024 to be held in London on the 6th and 7th of November. A handful of tickets are still available. Please check the FT Live website, and I look forward to seeing many of you there so that we can keep this discussion going. I also hear that the tea and the coffee they serve at our venue, the Landmark Hotel, is rather good. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join us for our next tea break, and I'm sure we'll have Paul back in the studio with us again in the near future. Thank you very much.